everyone, it's Janette here from Case Flower School, and today I just want to give a couple of top tips about roses. So the roses I have here in front of me today are Red Naomi. Now when you're buying Naomi roses, you can get them in white or red. The Red Naomi plant only produces 2 red roses a day, so that's why they're quite expensive. But by God, when you go to buy the white ones, the Naomi white plant only produces 1 white rose a day. But the thing is about these roses, they are absolutely fabulous, they last for ages and they're really long-lasting roses. So when you're purchasing them wholesale, they come in wraps of 10, but normally the minimum you can buy is 20. So first of all, remove the plastic, which I've just done already. Remove the plastic. I'm just allowing them to lie. I just have wax flower here in front of me that I'm just conditioning, so I'm leaving them lying there on the wax flower. Wax flower is fabulous. And the scent of this, oh my God, it's like a kind of a lemony scent. So first of all, back to the roses, is remove the elastic bands. Okay, that'll allow your roses to kind of loosen up. Now what I need everybody to go and invest in is a stem stripper. I'm absolutely amazed at the amount of florists out there who don't own one of these. Go and get yourself 2 of them, because normally one ends up in the bin. We have them for sale on the website under Floral Sundries, and our website address is flowerschoolisland.com. Go and treat yourself, they're absolutely amazing. Watch this. A lot of florists will be in flower shops, taking all the leaves and taking all the thorns off, and I just do that. That's it, that's my rose done. Take up our next one. These are quite thorny. Just run it down, and again, it just takes the little tip off the thorn. It doesn't damage the stem. Where a mistake, with some of the metal stem strippers, what they do is it actually rips the thorn away from the rose, and it leaves like an open wound or an open hole, on the stem. And what happens then, if there's any sort of bacteria at all, it's going to get into the stem and it's basically going to affect the longevity of the flower. Where these plastic ones, they don't damage the stems at all, and like you can use it on your chrysanthemums, your lilies, it works on everything. And if the stem is really stiff, you can always kind of go up and down a little bit just to make sure that you remove them all. So there you can see I removed all the leaf below the waterline. Now normally our buckets that we use here at the school are 30 centimetres in height, and normally I would be putting around 18-20 centimetres of water into the end of the buckets. First of all, I sterilise all the buckets with Domestos bleach, and I use blue Domestos bleach. I don't use any other brand, and I don't use any of what we call the scented bleaches, like the pink bottle or the yellow bottle. But when I'm placing the water in the bucket, as I said, I'm normally going about 20 centimetres, and yet you look at these stems and you say, God, she's removed a lot more foliage than 20 centimetres. That's because I'm thinking ahead. If in a flower shop you ever have to end up making hand-tied bouquets out of these roses, it's a godsend when you've cleaned up that little bit further on the stem. So that's why I'm inclined to take a lot more foliage off the stem than what other people would recommend. The other thing I like to do to my roses when I get them in is remove the guard petals. Now florists might kind of disagree with me here. First of all, some people like to leave the guard petals on. I always think it makes the rose look bad, and from a customer point of view it does look bad. Ideally, you should wait till the rose is hydrated and then remove the guard petal, but that's double jobbing. And that would mean conditioning and treating the roses, placing them in water, taking them all back out again, taking all the guard petals off and then putting them back in water. So I hate double jobbing, so I am just going to be extra careful, and I'm going to remove the guard petals. So there's definitely 2, but maybe 3. So there was 3 on that one, okay? So all you're doing is you're basically getting the petal, you'll know it, it's the one that's marked, okay? And you just pinch it off. Just be extra careful and support the stem. There was just 2 on that one there. So there's between 2 and 3, and I suppose you might come across the odd one, and there's 4. It depends on how big the rose bud was. The guard petals are like the petals that was up around the bud when it was born. That's the best way to look at it. And it was the one that was on the outside, and it weathered all the storms and the weather and so on. And basically it's the one that looks tatty. And as the rose kind of bloomed, you have these tatty, outside roses that have been protecting the bud, but as I said, they've kind of like been up against all the extremities. So that's why they're marked. Now sometimes in different colour roses, maybe in pale pink roses, florists leave them on maybe for some wedding bouquets, because they think, well not that they think, it does, it makes the rose maybe look more vintage looking. And if the bride was looking for a vintage theme wedding, wedding bouquet, absolutely it's ideal. But then there's nothing as bad if she comes back to you the following day with a close-up photograph and she says all my roses were dead in the wedding bouquet, and they weren't dead, it was the guard petals. So like, either educate your customer on it if you're going to leave them on, you know, the way, explain it to them, or do what I'm doing, is going along. And as you can see there, it takes a little bit of time. So this would be a junior's job. I'm probably the best qualified junior around. This would be a junior's job, removing all the leaves, the thorns, dethorning the roses as they call it, and then removing your guard petals. Now the next thing, again, everybody's different. Florists differ, florists die, doctors differ, patients die. Everybody has their own way of doing things. So I just want you to basically take on board what I'm teaching you here, and then take the tips of it that you think will work best for you. So as I said, they normally come wrapped in 10s. Now maybe the roses you have come wrapped in 20s. So I'm just placing the 10 heads kind of like close enough together. If I had been more careful when I was laying them on the table, I could have made sure that all 10 flowers were laid with all the heads kind of like level. And then using a small piece of brown paper, this is just recycled brown paper that was wrapped around the bunches when they came in. I'm just going to wrap it firmly, you know what I mean, like to give the flowers a little bit of support. So I'm going to wrap that firmly around the heads, and I'm going to secure it with a little bit of sellotape. You can put 2 pieces of sellotape on, if you know me, to be very well sure, okay? Now, there's 2 reasons for the paper wrapped around the rose heads. One reason is to support them while they're having their first drink. Sometimes, probably not with Naomi roses, but sometimes with a cheaper stem rose, there could be airlocks in the stem. There's a time delay on the water getting up the stem, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Sometimes the rose is up there, you know, saying, oh my God, where's my drink of water? And the head goes over. We call it breaking its neck. So by placing the paper around the roses, it supports the head while they're having that first drink. These stems are really, really thick, and they're really, really strong. So I know that's not going to be a problem. But I don't know what kind of roses you have. And some of you might have the skinniest little stemmed roses, do you know the way, where the rose head is bigger than the stem. And again, it's top heavy, and there's a bigger chance of your heads going over. You need to hydrate these roses. So these roses are out of water probably for 2 days at this stage. They're in a kind of like, the transporting truck was kind of like a cooler, and it's fine, you know the way, but they have been out of water for a long time. So you need to hydrate them, and the longer they're out of water, the longer you need to hydrate them. We always say the minimum is 4 hours, but with a short stem flower, 4 hours is probably fine. With a long stemmed flower, you might need to go to 6 or 8 hours, or even a 12-hour period. If your roses happen to be Colombian roses or Ecuadorian roses, well then you probably need to give them 24 hours. The longer, the better. If you're trying to speed up the process of getting your roses hydrated, you can buy this product here, which is called Quick Dip. In some countries, it's called Magic Dip. Directions is on the back, but I'll give it kind of quickly to you. Use like a small paper cup and put about 3 centimetres into the end of the paper cup. Cut at least 1 inch off the end of them stems on a 45-degree angle. Dip it in the Quick Dip, dip the stems in the Quick Dip for 1 second. That's why it's called Quick Dip. In and out, 1 second, and straight away into your bucket of cold water. Now remember, your bucket has been sterilised. You may have a taint of bleach in the water that the flowers are going to drink, and maybe you've added some of the flower food, which we recommend to our students to add to their water anyway. And all this will help to prolong the life of the flower, will speed up the hydrating of the stem, and it means then you can use it quicker. But a lot of you may not have the Quick Dip, and that's absolutely fine. So the next step you're on is cutting the ends of your flowers. Now I'm going to bring, there's a leaf still here, we'll remove that one. I'm going to bring these stems in close, and hopefully you can see this, right? So the end of the stems, can they see that, Deirdre? Yep. The end of them stems are kind of like a dark brown, kind of dried effect. Hopefully you can see that, so take note, okay? So that's like, I'm going to talk about that for a second. When the grower cuts the flowers, first of all, what happens to them is they go into shock. It'd be like if I gave Deirdre now a big punch in the stomach. She'd go, ah, and she'd suck in air. And that's what happens to the roses. So when the grower comes along, and they're actually hand cut, okay, so there's a person physically cutting the rose. When the rose is cut, it immediately goes into shock. It sucks in air, and that's what causes the airlock in the stem, okay? But also it bleeds. Now when I say bleed, it's not blood, it's like a sap comes out the end of the stem. That sap then will dry up, and that's what causes that browny green tinge you see at the end. If you don't open up the ends of the stems and you just place them in water, which some supermarkets do, them flowers are not actually drinking water, they're just there bouncing around in a bucket of water. So what you need to do is cut 1 inch off the end on a 45-degree angle. Because my ends are different lengths, I'm cutting more than 1 inch off some of them. So there I am on a 45-degree angle, the ends of the stem. And if I hold it up close there, I'm going to hold them in. Can you see it's more of a creamy lime green tinge? Now, them flowers are straight away gone into shock, and they're going, and they're all sucking there. So really, I should have the bucket of water beside me, but sure, I'm here chatting, and I'll recut them again in a second. So the idea is, you're cutting the ends of the stem, they're immediately sucking up water, okay? You probably dip them in the quick dip for 1 second, and straight away into the bucket of cold water. And you leave them there to drink for a minimum of 4 to 6 hours, depending on how long they have been out of water. The longer, the better. The paper that's wrapped around them, that's just for the first drink. So like after the 4 or 6 hours, you could take the paper off and your roses will all be standing up dead straight, and immediately they'll start to bloom or blossom. If you need to hold the roses back, maybe there's a wedding on and the weather's pretty warm at the moment and your wedding isn't for 2 or 3 more days, by keeping the paper on, it'll delay the roses opening. And as soon as you take the paper off, they'll start to blow. But if you kind of find, okay, they're blown enough, you can re-wrap them back up in the paper. Or sometimes in a bunch, you may have a couple of blown ones and a couple of tight ones. And you may not want the blown ones to open anymore. So you could wrap the paper around them ones, but then the smaller ones, you could leave them loose in the vase. It's kind of a little bit of a control factor. So hopefully I've given you a couple of tips there. There's loads more. I could go on and on and on. Check us out on YouTube under Case Flower School. Follow our IGTV on Instagram and follow us on Facebook on our live shows every Friday at 11 o'clock, and you'll pick up lots more tips. If you enjoyed this tutorial, give us a thumbs up, like, share or tag somebody that you think might be interested. The very best of luck, and thanks for listening to me.